Morning. Pamela and I are back. This week we are working on a little bit of yin, so a little counterbalance to the inversions and the asanas, but nicely building off of all of the rolling that maybe some of you have been doing. So we are going to start on your backs. Believe it or not, the 20 minutes goes fairly fast, so I will chat while you get set up in a wide-legged supine twist. So you're going to take your feet onto the mat and then feel the edges of your mat. So take your feet nice and wide. Yeah, exactly. And then leave your feet, let both knees fall. Arms can fall, gaze can fall, anywhere that it's comfortable. And unlike vinyasa or even hatha iyengar, this isn't about muscular engagement. This is about letting gravity take hold and letting your body take over, sort of taking what it needs, which may be harder than doing all of the work, right? On most days, that seems nearly impossible. But you're just going to spend a moment, same as we do any yoga practice, starting to feel the breath move through the body. So not worrying about ujjayi breath. This is really about release. Sinking into the exhales, breathing fully as you inhale. And just feeling the gentle shift and change that's happening. Maybe what feels like more the front of your hip through the quad. It might come up towards the hip, or it might be stretching closer towards the knee. You might feel it a little more on the outside towards the IT band, glute minimus medius. And noticing how that shifts as you breathe, maybe filling up the lungs, expanding the rib cage, drawing low ribs a little bit away from the hips. But really starting to settle into some deep ease here, as though you were playing dead in your left hip. Left knee as well. All right, so as we start to work through all of these yin postures, you're going to notice some of them have different names. They're, for the most part, very similar to many of the postures you're familiar with. It's just that instead of engaging the muscles and working into a posture, very much the opposite, right? Sinking, releasing, softening. Some of the names are a little bit silly, but they're entertaining, so I will let you know when they have something different to say about them. If it feels okay, you might decide here to hook gently the right heel over your left knee. We'll take just another 10, maybe 12 breaths as we start to prep the hips. You're starting to think about energy channels, right? We tapped a little bit into this in the 7 days of chakras. We talked about nadis. So in yoga, this is where your prana, your energy, kind of moves through. And they make sense, right? They're organ centers. We're talking about things like the heart pumping blood, veins, arteries. In Chinese medicine, they're called meridians. And instead of calling it prana, your energy is called qi. C-H-I or Q-I. Same idea. As you slowly start to release the hook of your heel, if you have it, you're going to slowly bring the knees back up towards the sky, and we'll let your knees fall in the opposite direction. Just letting your mind continue to settle into the hips. Maybe it's following the sensation of your breath. You might even start to build pauses at the bottom of your exhale, which is where we tend to physiologically release the stress. Kind of lingering as you drain the brain or you drain the shoulders of tension, wherever you're tending to carry your tension these days, just noticing where you're holding, or you might feel a little bit stuck or a little bit tight. In yin, we're talking about balance. So we have 12 meridians that are paired, so basically 6 pairs and then 2 separate standalone meridians, energy lines that run throughout the body. They're very, very specific, which is what acupuncture and acupressure is based on. We won't be poking you or dry needling you, unfortunately, which is very therapeutic, also very intense. But We'll do a little bit of acupressure, right? So we'll give you a few couple of points, but just some basics, right? Today we're talking about liver in the gallbladder. Your liver is the yin component, which is energy moving upward in the body, and your gallbladder is the yang, energy moving down. So they together complete a cycle. Right? And your energy, your chi cycles in 24-hour periods. So you might notice your energy shifts throughout the day. It might be shifting already as we speak. If you haven't already hooked the heel, maybe you go for it, and we'll take just another 8 breaths or so. But starting to tie the energy of your breath to the energy of your body. Just making that subtle connection, starting to move with your mind, with breath, consciousness, not solely isolated in your brain space, but moving it through the rest of your body to feel the toes and your fingertips. Maybe you're following the sensation of your heartbeat, whatever it is. For 3. 2. And as you gently release, you're going to bring the knees back up gently to center. And as you come towards seated, you can kind of swing your legs to one side if you'd like. You don't necessarily have to come through tabletop. But we're going to move the setup either half pigeon or deer. If you're not familiar with deer, very similar. You can take your right knee up the mat as though you were setting up half pigeon. And then almost as though you were getting ready to read a book or watch a movie with kindergartners. You're just going to settle the left heel towards your bum. Left knee can come out comfortably. So you're either going to stay here. You can still fold over the front thigh, or you can extend the left leg fully behind you and set up your regular half pigeon. I will tell you that this, again, is not about forcing your way in. You can take blocks underneath your forehead, or your heart might be a nice option. You can even take a little something underneath your bum. Now these could be cookie sheets, pillows, books, whatever you can find around your house. Anything that supports you releasing any holding or any tension. You want a small block for your bum? Is the goal. So yoga props to support you being able to release here, because we're going to be here about 3 minutes or so. Typically 3 to 5 minutes is the length of time in yin postures, and also the length of time, give or take, for acupressure to work, I guess, optimally. Now, full disclosure, I do not practice acupuncture or acupressure or dry needling. It's just information that I've been researching on my own, so something to look into if this is kind of poking some interest in the brain. So your liver and gallbladder meridians, kind of like chakras, they have elements, which is wood in this case. We're talking about anger and frustration. When it's balanced, there's also kindness, but when you feel an imbalance in the body, when your meridian lines are a little bit off here, you might be prone to agitation. You may be a little more frustrated these days, angry. There's no judgment there, just noticing. There's plenty of stuff going on in today's world to make any of us more than frustrated or agitated, among many other things. So if this is something that you've been familiar with over the last 4+ months or 4 minutes, maybe these poses are starting to bring out some of that, then great. You are in the right class, doing the right things to kind of tap into these imbalances and release some of that. Right? You might be feeling stagnant or stuck in emotions that no longer serve us. So it's not that you're thinking too hard about this, right? But with that in the back of your mind, just kind of waiting and watching the body, observing. Maybe shifts in tension, shifts in energy, shifts in mood, whatever it feels like. It doesn't always necessarily have a word per se. Sometimes it shows up as being defensive, impulsive, maybe we might feel a little bit rash in terms of making decisions, or sometimes we might feel like we are unable to stick up for ourselves. This shows up often in moments where we have IBS or PMS. So spending some time today kind of correcting, tapping into a little bit of balance in our bodies. So perhaps as you breathe, inviting in little bits of kindness for ourselves, not particularly other people. That's always nice, but we often forget to do the same for ourselves. So being kind to your hip. Your shoulders, your jaw. Using your breath to find a little more cyclical energy, right? Yin moves up, yang moves down, maybe inhales. Have a little more ease, exhales, more stability, right? You can make it up as you go along, but basically whichever kind of breath is getting you to breathe a little fuller, a little deeper, a little smoother as we work out all of the kinks, starting to ease your way out of your half pigeon or your deer. We'll move towards the other side. So be gentle. This other side might require something slightly different, or more props, less props. So paying attention. If you're in half pigeon, we're moving knees in line with the hips. Letting your mind feel your back foot. Placing anything underneath your heart or your forehead or your bum. Sometimes it's not even the bum, it's the front of the hip or the quad on the opposite side. If you're in deer, also feel free to take some props. Keeping in mind that neither one of these postures is necessarily better. There's going to be a space that works better for your body. Half pigeon is called swan in your yin practice. If you were to keep your palms on the floor and lift your heart, right, often this is a spot where we might come back to if we stayed the full 5 minutes. You might need a little bit of release, or you might linger here in the first minute or so of your practice before maybe creating too much sensation in the hip. But otherwise, you're setting up wherever you are. So if you hear swan later on in this series, it really just means a half pigeon. And you can feel free to take your deer at any point in time. But again, as you settle in, just being aware of your body, turning inward, pratyahara, which most of you by now are familiar with. Right, your fifth limb of yoga. We focus on so many things externally in the course of our day to get through it. So really just taking advantage of these handful of moments, minutes, short minutes that we have to focus on ourselves with as much intention, with as much attention as we do all of the other people and all of the other things in our day. About 12 breaths. If you're starting to feel agitated or frustrated or stuck, right, remembering, find the bottom of those exhales, sink in, find that moment of release, maybe linger there. Maybe you're starting to focus on breathing into kindness. Or maybe just a slight shift often when we're moving through vinyasa, power flow, hatha. Right, we're moving deeply into postures using the exhale, squeezing. Maybe the opposite here where you're kind of softening and breathing into space. For 5. Maybe as simple as starting by softening your jaw. Again, softening your tongue. It is incredibly hard to clench your jaw if you are softening your tongue. It's hard for your mind to be anywhere else, honestly. If you're trying to soften your tongue, you're realizing by now it's such an odd, unfamiliar sensation. That also helps to soften all of your facial muscles that we use to make expressions through the entirety of our day. And so as you take your time to ease your way out of your deer or swan or half pigeon, wherever you've landed, we're moving onto your bum for what's called shoelace, which is essentially your Gomukhasana, your cow face. So you're going to stack your knees. You want to use a block. Again, it could be books, cookie sheets, sometimes a loaf pan. I don't know. You got to get a little bit creative at the house. But you want to be able to sit level with your sits bone. So if I try to do this without a block, I'm leaning over at like a 45-degree angle initially. I might get somewhere towards 30. But you want to privilege the support for your body. So as you stack knees, heels move somewhat towards your hips. Wherever they land comfortably is where you're shooting for. So there's no yoga police, right? There's no measurement tools. You're just going to feel your way into this. So about 2 to 3 minutes. In Gomukhasana, we tend to take the traditional arm bind. So in something like vinyasa, whatever leg is on top, we are reaching that same arm up and back. Here, we are simply working to fold over the front thigh. So initially it might mean that you're simply tucking the chin, resting maybe your forearms somewhere. Maybe you've planted a bolster across. If you begin to fold at some point, maybe taking a block or two the tall way might offer space for you to rest your forehead on. But here we're going to settle in. And then we're going to set up an acupressure point. It's also an acupuncture point, and therefore, I'm sure, dry needling point, but sorry, no needles today. It's on your feet. So Pamela's going to do this while you are. It is your liver 3, Tai Chung. I've probably said that entirely wrong, so I apologize. But you want to look in between the toes, or at least feel in between the toes. Liver 2 is in that little webbing. We'll get to that later on in the week. Liver 3, you have sort of a conglomeration of tighter foot bones. And once you dip off of that on the top of your foot, you're going to feel a little divot where your metatarsals start, right, your toe bones. And once you find that little divot, you're going to keep a gentle pressure. So you can kind of poke around. If you poke a little towards the big toe metatarsal or kind of press towards the second toe metatarsal, or maybe in or a little up or down, right? You can wiggle around, and wherever you feel that sensitive spot that feels almost like cramping, almost like release, you found it. There's probably a number of little spaces around that. And we're going to also hold this roughly that 2 to 3 minutes. So a little on this side and a little on the other side. It doesn't need to be intense. Just like the yin practice, you can err on the side of something more gentle. So whether you're folding, rounding, or not, you are somewhere that's relatively comfortable for the hips, somewhere you can release. And breathe a little deeply, or a lot. Right, but this little acupressure point on your liver meridian is releasing, right, anything that feels stagnant, stuck, agitation, frustration. Sort of removing some of the blockages, letting your energy, your chi flow a little more fluidly. Your liver actually cycles through filters, I think, roughly 1 liter every minute of blood in your body, right? Detoxifying. It does a number of things. I think it regulates glucose and has multiple different cells for many different purposes. But just as it's doing a tremendous amount of work and it has to cycle through, right, roughly a liter of blood every single minute that we are alive. And so removing any blockages. Energetically, you can do that with your breath, still working out any kinks. And even if you're newer to these ideas, if it's kind of going in one ear and out the other, that's okay. If you're pressing acupuncture points, trying to breathe, trying to relax, breathe through the stretch in your hips. I know there's probably limited other places your mind can be, which is maybe one of the most beneficial pieces of this practice. And so as you slowly release your shoelace on this side, taking your time to unravel the legs and then rewrap them, we'll set it up on the opposite side. So again, a lot of allowance, making adjustments. One side might require a higher block, the other side might require no block. You might have opened up your hips just enough to perhaps start to fold a little on this side. But once you have yourself kind of wiggled in, you're going to drop the weight of your shoulders. You might decide to close your eyes, right? Dropping the weight of your jaw, supporting your forehead perhaps with even the coffee table, a chair, a stool, whatever you're next to, that can allow you a little bit of release here. And we'll find for releasing quotations, we'll find for another minute or so that acupressure point. Again, nothing intense, just enough so that you feel it. You might feel the release happening almost like an itch at the top of your foot. You might feel almost like a cramp underneath running through the bottom of your foot. Just notice where you're feeling that. I was busy playing with and poking all kinds of things earlier, and at some point realized I had made myself a little nauseous. But it took me like 5 minutes to figure out why I was feeling so off, a little disturbed. This should be a little more settling. So yeah, anything that I offer you is something that I have guinea pigged at some point. It's not to say that you might experience it a little bit more differently, so just pay attention to your body. And seeing if you can allow for a little more rest here. Loosening up any expectations that you might have had about this particular pose. You might not get necessarily in the same shape as we find ourselves in Gomukhasana, where we're engaging the muscles, squeezing, releasing. We are active in a stretch. Here, it's just gravity. But really trusting your body. Right? The amount of things your body does all on its own to get you through day in and day out, all of the processes. I'd be here, I'm sure, all day listing them, right? Which is a nice point to point out, where so often we can focus on the slightest thing that went wrong in our day or isn't going in our favor. But honestly, if you just focus on your body, how many things are going in your favor to get you successfully through the day alive in one piece, should give you enough of a gratitude practice to get you through at least the fall, right? So focusing on the things that are working, gratitude, right? Still breathing in that little bit of kindness, just noticing where you are energetically. Maybe this is less agitating by now. Maybe your jaw is less clenched. We'll take any small victory given these last 4 months, right? So again, as you slowly release your shoelace, keeping in mind you can always linger. I wouldn't linger more than maybe 5 minutes or so. If you have built a yin practice, there are postures that are held upwards of 20 minutes, but not today, unless you're maybe ease your way in and then see how it goes, right? So as you come out of your shoelace, we're going to set up, I'm going to bring some balance back physically to your hips as well and set up in your frog. Or if you prefer a wide-legged child's pose, maybe with toes touching. So you might start in the wide-legged child's pose, check in with the hips. If that all feels okay, I'm going to invite you to take frog, which is drawing your shoulders forward towards tabletop. Knees are going to move out. You want to check in with your knees. You can see them in line with, and you can turn to face any direction so that you're a little more cozy on the knees. Knees in line with your hips. Again, nothing exaggerated, so don't go maybe for a full-blown frog. The trick is not to get to the floor, but to support releasing the body. Feeling your ankles in line with the knees. And there's a little bit of flex as you get set up. This can relax the toes a little bit once you get supports under your hips, your heart, so not necessarily your crotch, but hip bones, sternum, your forehead. You can use pillows, books, blocks. Maybe you have a large Labrador retriever, some solid kind of animal to do some snuggle therapy while you're there. You know, maybe you still have a lingering sensation in that liver 3 spot. So you can let your mind follow sensation wherever it's at, whether it's in the hips, the top of your foot there, could be in the breath. But really trying to find that deep release. We hold so much during the day, just in general. It doesn't have to be anything extra than, right, standing, trying to sit at a computer all day, trying to chase the kids around. You might be pregnant, any number of things. Your body's doing so much work all day long, so really providing yourself this release. Taking as much, advantage of these 20 minutes in your day as you can. And particularly if you are headed off to bed or something more restful, then absolutely make sure you have something under your heart, your forehead, so that you can work your elbows out a little bit wider. But again, starting to create a little more balance in everything, the breath. It might become a little more softer, more soothing, slow. Remember, you're not trying to get towards the ground. You're not trying to create any more sensation or any more work in the body. Trying to play dead, if you will, in those hips, in your groin. For 10. Again, breathing in kindness, doing a little bit of inventory, noticing where you are energetically. It's a whole lot easier to let go of any frustration, anger, anything that we feel stuck on, stuck in, if we're releasing physically in the body. So shoulders, jaw, your brow, your exhales. Take one more generous breath cycle. As you start to ease your way out of your child's pose or your frog, wherever you are, we're going to move onto our bum. You're going to come onto your back and take a big stretch. There is a pose in yin called banana asana. I'm not really sure. Seems kind of silly, but it's kind of lovely. Take your arms above your head, reach for your elbows. Cross over an ankle and kind of C-curve a twist. And it might feel nice and yummy just to have your legs neutral together, stretching out. You can linger here as long as you'd like. Right? Be good to yourselves. Be kind to yourselves. And we will see you tomorrow. Toodles.